We also bought our office supplies, safes, executive desks and chairs from Kingdom, and they gave us expert advice on how to set up our office.
Guys, that makes 3 of us. I also got our sofa and bedroom sets, plus our dining hall furniture for our new home from Kingdom.
Wow, Mom, that makes 4 of us. I usually get my stationery items from Kingdom, and my teacher also mentioned that our classroom furniture was provided by Kingdom.
So there you have it. Whenever you're thinking about setting up an office or acquiring furniture for your home, etc., Kingdom Books and Stationery should be your first port of call. With over 40 years experience in the industry, we stock and supply a wide variety of globally sourced office and home furniture, stationery and equipment. Visit our head office, Takweje, Osu near the Osu Cemetery, Tamania Community 4, Takrady opposite Vijay Mays Plaza, Cape Coast University Bookshop, Spintex Road near Absa Bank, Atomic Center Point Mall, Winneba University Campus, KNUST, the University Bookshop, and Santasi in Kumasi. You can also visit our shop online, www.kingdomstoreonline.com. Hurry while stock lasts. For further inquiries, contact us on 050-162-0810 or 0302-764-101. Email info@kingdomgh.com. Kingdom Books and Stationery Limited, where quality and affordability is assured. Terms and conditions apply.
Are you clapping? Are you giving God the glory? Hallelujah! Every day you wake up shouting, my business is not moving. Customers are not coming. But look, my brother, my sister, who are you deceiving? Have you smiled today? Do you have the confidence to smile? Your face alone is chasing people away. Yeah! We all know that the problem is not a spiritual problem. The problem is a dental problem. She was saying, use Pepsodent charcoal toothpaste to remove yellow. Somebody shout amen.
Craft your smile with Pepsodent charcoal. It removes stains and whitens teeth. This advert is FDA approved.
At Star Oil, we believe fuel is not just a commodity, it is a lifeline. Every cedi saved at the pump is a cedi that helps a mother send her child to school. A farmer transports food to the market, or a young entrepreneur deliver their first order. Our mission is to make fuel more accessible by offering consistently competitive prices, helping ease the financial burden on Ghanaian households. In a country where transportation costs can consume nearly a third of household income, this is not just business. It's a social responsibility. Star Oil, still quality and affordable fuels for all.
The luckiest. Luck is everywhere, for everyone, yeah. The luckiest. Luck is everywhere, for everyone, yeah. Money we define, every day and night. Mama, dada, keep on hustling for the family. The luckiest. Last dance, everyone to hush. You can win some cash. You can be the luckiest with 1 cedi, luckiest with 5,000. The luckiest, the teacher got the market woman. You can be the luckiest. Oh, the luckiest. Luck is everywhere, for everyone. You can be the luckiest. The luckiest. Luck is everywhere, for everyone. Stars, everyone to hush. Luck is everywhere. Luck is everywhere. Oh, tell me, are you feeling lucky? Because I'm feeling lucky. Because I'm feeling like the ultimate. That's how we go win. If I win, you win. You could be the luckiest. Saswabo. Sasso, sasso, kume tonton preko. Sasso, sasso, se kume tonton preko. Edwana twami ne buseshe. Yeah, hakasia ne malaria. Minya me pone me sasso spray. Every mosquito started run away. Kume tonton preko. Sasso, sasso, se kume tonton preko. Kume tonton preko. Sasso, kum tonton preko. Na ni sham ne die.
This advert is FDA approved.
Welcome back to Ghana Connect.
When they say something is primary facie, which means
he has a case to answer.
He has case to answer. But the constitutional instrument here is whether or not all primary facie are true. And I'm not a lawyer, but I'm very much a lawyer, but I'm a student. I'm not a student of law. I did a great business.
Against the provisions of the Constitution and the Referendum, we have understood and right as a recommendation on the first position.
Before we could say that, they have represented and put already. So did we take our views into consideration, or is just a fear complete? They have written whatever they wanted to write.
I'll say I'm sad but not surprised. I'm sad because this is an unholy assault on the independence of the judiciary. This has a far-reaching consequence moving into the future. This goes to buttress the point that whoever sits in as a Chief Justice from today should also be thinking about the future implications.
That is a very dangerous precedent that they are facing, and it will come back to eat them. It was clearly stated that they would make sure that it is removed.
You know, it is not fair to make these blanket statements without any basis. The Constitution of Ghana was written before President Mahama took office. It is not attribute political motivation for the use of Article 140 for the removal of the Chief Justice based on petitions that were received, which petitions were taken through due process as prescribed by the Constitution, and they recommended the removal of the Chief Justice for stated misbehavior. The former Attorney General is fully aware that the president has no choice in the matter. The president cannot decide to agree or disagree.
I mean, the confrontational, attitude that she took, made it impossible for her to return, to resume her official duties. She was so abrasive, taking, the government here, government there, going to ECOWAS, and I don't think, that we should be sad about this.
So a lot has been said since the president acted on the recommendation of the Article 146 committee chaired by Justice Court Praman. It must be emphasized that when the president set up the committee had to go and do their work. And when the committee recommends that the president removes the Chief Justice or reinstates whatever the recommendation will be, that is what the president is bound by. And so that is what has happened this week, and Madam Tokono is no longer the Chief Justice. Let's get into the matters. And Ernesto Yeboah is with the Economic Fighters League, has a lot to say about this. It's good to have Ernesto connect with us. Ernesto, good evening. Ernesto, if you can unmute.
Yes, good evening, my brother.
Definitely good to have you connect with us. And then Aaron Asiedu Entry is the founder of the Law Lab. He's also connecting with us on this matter. Aaron, it's good to have you connect with us.
Kwaku, it's good to have me to be here.
Right. And then Sweetie Abochi. I don't want to mention the other name because if I mention, she will also mention some other name of mine. So I won't mention it. But she's also connecting with us on this matter. Sweetie Abochi, it's good to have you connect with us.
Kwaku, it's really great to connect with you. Hello, everyone.
Great. And then any moment from now, we'll be joined by lawyer Justice Abdullah. He's a law lecturer at the University of Professional Studies. So let me start with you, Ernesto Yeboah. Did you expect this? It came so sudden for some people. They presented a report one Monday morning. There was no notice. By 3 p.m. exactly, the Chief Justice was gone. Were you surprised when you heard that?
Kwaku, I haven't been surprised. But good evening to you once again and to our listeners out there. I think if the earlier conversation we had on this, if it's still on air, I mean, I'm sure you would be reminded that I stated that, well, what was happening is very determinable. One could tell, because let's face it, the former Chief Justice was not she was not neutral. I mean, if we are all being honest with ourselves and following the kind of actions or rulings that were taking place and all of that, we all know that, look, she was not neutral. And so when it comes to the professionalism test, I think that the former Chief Justice misbehaved to the point where it became clear that this is not somebody who was ready to take the position of Lord Denning, I mean, on the bench. And so it is not surprising. Of course, the constitutional processes have been followed. And the way and manner that everything has transpired also points to how vulnerable the judiciary and the Office of Chief Justice is. I mean, whoever goes to occupy that position would have to make a decision as to how to remain in office. And that's why I'm happy that we have a constitutional review process going on that may take into consideration how to fortify the space so that we do not have a situation where it becomes that easy to remove a Chief Justice. I mean, even if it's going to be that easy, the processes shouldn't weigh so much in favor of the appointing authority. Can we even have a situation where the Chief Justice is no longer appointed by the President, but by a judicial commission? I mean, that then decides who becomes their Chief Justice with a secured tenure of office, and then following the mandate, and then maybe giving oversight to the General Legal Counsel or something like that. I mean, to protect the independence of the judiciary. Because now, and with everything that has transpired, I don't think we can even blame President Mahama for that. I mean, like Felix said, it was not premeditated. I mean, he didn't write the Constitution. He didn't put Article 146. But then it so happened that it fell within his domain to exercise it. And he has exercised it. He has followed due process. And so to that extent, we don't see, I mean, any problems with that.
Aaron, do you accept the premise of Ernesto's argument is that, listen, this was the Chief Justice that clearly had this coming for her. She was not fair, she was not impartial, and perhaps conducted herself in a way that some would say, well, she had it coming.
Kwaku, I doubt you yourself would even agree with Ernesto because, one, for you to say a certain ruling has gone in a certain way and it makes the person neutral, should we go to the Supreme Court and pick all rulings by justices of the current Supreme Court and check where their ruling have gone? Let me take the late Ernest Kumi's case. We saw Justice Waman dissenting in the majority ruling in favor of Ernest Kumi, Is it safe to say, my Lord Puaman is an NDC person, or he's not neutral?
The parties
Some
in
of the
those cases were not
statements
MPP NDC,
you
really.
said
The parties in that matter and the specifics of the issue that were being discussed were not about the political parties, I guess.
but you were dealing with an MPP MP being challenged, even on contempt issues, which would obviously have an effect on he being removed from parliament, and which would definitely favor the NDC MP. It is why I'm asking you, is it safe to say that? It is just to tell you the position taken by my senior Ernesto, I disagree with it, and it's untenable. Again, Lord Denning is not the standard for the Ghanaian judicial system. We appreciate his rulings, we follow his rulings where it is applicable, even where the Ghanaians certain. We do not believe in such rulings from the English law. We depart from it. I think it is evident in our Contract Act. You can check section 1 to 3, dealing with discharge of contracts, section 5, section 6, dealing with privity, amongst others. Now, Kwaku, what has happened, was it determinable? I believe that even a 2-day-old child, a born child, would agree that that person would even determine that indeed Madame Gertrude Arabe Saba Sakitokono would have been removed as Chief Justice. My issue has always been simple. Kwaku, when you pick our 1992 constitution, for me, I've always maintained that it does two things. First, it creates the states and it creates the arms of government, distribute powers amongst them, and in fact, instruct them to regulate the relationship between these arms of government and also the citizen that forms the state. If those in government abuses their power, you know what will lead to? There is likely a topple, going to be a coup d'etat. Let me even put it that way. Not to say I like coup d'etat. But the framers of the constitution, in their wisdom, do not like this way of toppling government. And so they have placed in elements to limit the exercise of public power by those in government. And these elements are what we term in law as constitutionalism. One of the key elements you must see in criminal law is the principles of legality. When you read Article 1911 and Article 19.5, it tells you that for something should constitute a criminal offense, one, it must be one that is defined in written law with an attached penalty to it. And in fact, 19.5 would add on to say that for us to say that, let's say, Kwaku has committed this criminal offense, such action should constitute a criminal offense as of that time, meaning it should be defined in written law and with attached penalty. Now, Kwaku, the point
I wonder where you're going.
The point I'm driving at is when you pick the Constitution and you read Article 146, the first article will tell you stated misbehavior. And you know, Kwaku, you don't read this Constitution in part, you read the Constitution in whole. Now, the question is, what is stated misbehavior? Should stated misbehavior be left within the purview of a certain 5-member committee, which can change in the next time we have another government, or even within this government when somebody petitions the president about whoever becomes a chief justice or any justice of the Superior Court? My position previously still remains same, and which has been corroborated by Sir Dennis Dominic Ejei, who is now at the Supreme Court, my Lord Justice Akabuafo, the majority leader of Parliament, and even the Ghana Bar Association, is that President Mohammed's discretion exercised under Article 146 did not comply with Article 296C of the Constitution.
These matters went to the Supreme Court, particularly the one you talk about discretion, and the court dismissed it. The Supreme Court dismissed it. They dismissed that case. It was part of some of the reliefs that were being sought, and they were dismissed.
Unless I'm not clear with that, because I followed all the cases thoroughly. And I'm telling you that the majority leader has even mentioned in Parliament that they need a regulation. You know why? Else, Kwaku, if we don't take care, let's say Kwaku becomes a justice of the Superior Court of Judicature, and Kwaku is going to buy Gary and beans at the roadside, and Kwaku shouts on the seller that, oh, hurry up and serve me. It may even constitute a stated misbehavior. And so we need this CI to guide our our Article 146, just to reflect the ruling or the dictum by that bar and so JSC in several cases that we don't read this constitution in part.
Exactly.
And it
so Aaron,
yes, sir.
I want to find out very briefly before I give the mic to Suti Abuchi. I want to know from you, very briefly, do you feel like the Chief Justice has been unfairly dealt with? Because from the discussions you've had, you've pointed to the idea that the stated misbehavior has not been defined. And so, of course, it goes into the province of this 5-member committee that will investigate. And it's subjective. They get to determine that. But you can't really... Can you describe or can you define the word to encompass all the possibilities that will lead to stated misbehavior? I guess we'll get there. But I wonder if you feel like, given the position you've laid, that the Chief Justice, the former Chief Justice, has been unfairly treated.
Kwaku, if you read the case of ex parte Kevin Taylor, and you listen to the majority opinion given by my Lord Ayo Tanko of the Supreme Court, he says that even when somebody has committed a criminal offense, that person deserves a thorough due process of law. And if you don't take that person through a thorough due process of law, and the matter is brought up to the top echelons of power, that person is likely to be freed. So in as much as we are dealing with the substantive nature of it, due process of law must also be followed. And you would agree with me that due process in this particular instance was questionable. As to the substantive nature of it.
All right, we'll get there. We'll get into some of those substantives. Okay. So I wonder where you stand also. The opinions have really been divided since Monday when the decision was made. There are those who have squarely said that, listen, the provisions in the Constitution have been strictly followed. And of course, we are not reducing this to a strictly legal matter because the law will be on Sundays. Samson and his colleagues will discuss that when it gets there. But given all you've known about this process, the way it's gone. The New Patriotic Party now says the Chief Justice is a victim of circumstance. There are even MPs, former MPs, who've suggested that future Chief Justices and future Supreme Court judges will all be removed when power changes hands in terms of the political parties. I wonder what you make of all the conversations that have been had since this decision became official last Monday.
Well, I want to start by saying I agree with Aaron on just one point. And I think we all agree that Article 146 needs some more clarity. That has been the very subject of the controversy, right? But whether or not this followed due process is a question that we can all argue back and forth and we never come to the end of it. I also want to state clearly that we all know it's not the first time this Article 146 is being invoked to remove someone from office. We saw the same thing happen 2018, 2006, and now we're seeing it 2025. So it comes down to what lines were crossed, right? What were the infractions? And in fact, it's just one petition, the recommendation of one petition that we've seen so far, which has resulted in this. And if we want to argue whether or not it's political, whether or not, and you have to agree with me that whether or not we saw active members of the NDC state on record that when they come to power, they will remove the Chief Justice, whether or not we had that on record, the opposition and those who sympathize with the now impeached Chief Justice will still find a way to color this with partisan colors, because that's what we do. We might want to argue that our judicial independence is strong, our democracy is strong, but we like to paint everything in political colors. So I think that based on the arguments pouring in so far, we should just stick to the facts. And the fact of the matter is, Article 146 was invoked. The charges were made. Justice Tokono was heard. Daniel Ofori presented his evidence. In fact, the witnesses were called. She herself brought her witnesses, and they were heard. And the processes have ended in the removal of the Chief Justice. So, what was her crime? That is where it all comes down to. Whether or not these three infractions are strong enough or warrant her removal is another angle. And of course, that is where the former Chief Justice of Kwaku is calling a rigmarole and all that. But how high or how low do we really want to set the bar? Do we want to say that there are certain things that a Chief Justice can do and get away with it? We want to make it so difficult for a Chief Justice to, cause judicial infractions or this so-called stated misbehavior. How high do we want to set the bar? Unlawful expenditure of public funds, is it enough to warrant an impeachment? Abuse of discretionary power, is it enough? And the last one, I think that was interfering in the judicial appointment. That is her writing to former President Akufo-Addo and all that. I think it all comes down to lines are drawn so that we clearly decide who is wrong and who is right. If she did what they say she did, and she has been given the opportunity to present her case, she's been heard, and we still determine, not by we, I mean, the committee, the Kwaman committee, decided that what she did warrants an impeachment. What is really our argument now? And again, it's also because the people who claim there have been some constitutional infractions have yet to actually convince me as an individual, as a journalist even, what exactly were those infractions? What are you citing when you say the Constitution was not, there were some constitutional infractions in the processes so far? So I think this is something that, of course, is set a dangerous precedent. So that is even a question we should answer. Is it dangerous or is it good? So that people know now that no one is above the law. If you're the Chief Justice, the President, or the Speaker of Parliament, and you breach the law, to quote the famous, the former Chief Justice
The
now,
law is the law.
The law is the law. No matter how many noises are made, the law is the law. So I think it all comes down to the facts. Let's leave the politics out of it, because we will always try and argue politics. And if it was an NPP appointed Chief Justice, you know what I mean? I don't mean by, the Chief Justice being an NPP person, but like if it was the NPP administration that brought in the Chief Justice and NDC came and this is happening like we're seeing, NPP has every right to make that argument that it is a political vendetta. The same way it was an NDC appointed Chief Justice and the NPP were in power and they, followed this constitutional processes to remove it, they would also argue that it is political vendetta. So I think for me, it all comes down to the fact. And the people on the committee, we should not discount the level of combined, decades of experience and excellence, really, in terms of
Justice,
look at the names there. So what are we really saying? That these people are just trying to dance by the tune of some NDC campaign promise that they made? Are we saying that the 13 witnesses, the 12 witnesses, all the thousands of pages of evidence that were presented were all just some hogwash, just so that we can remove a certain Chief Justice for nothing, no crime that she committed? What are the lines that we are drawing? Because that's what it comes down to. And if these lines were crossed, then how high or how low do we really want to set the bar?
Exactly. And this is what I want to bring Ernest to. I think Sweetie makes a very good point about the bar. Because, of course, we are yet to read the full report. But we know from the snippets that part of the reason why Madame Chokonu is now no longer the Chief Justice is because she spent public resources to pay or to buy a plane ticket for the husband and the daughter. They went on private vacations and then the state paid them per diems. If you look at the travel policy, and that is the case that we made against her, the travel policy says if the Chief Justice was going on a private visit, private trips abroad, only her security will be paid for by the state. And now she went on 2 different holiday trips, one with the husband, one with the daughter, and then the plane tickets were bought from state coffers, and then also the per diems were also paid, plus transfer of judges, writing letters to the president to ask the president to nominate some persons to the Supreme Court. Far from being a matter of legal determination, Ernesto, Suti makes the point about how high or low do you want to set the bar. Do you think that, for instance, the Chief Justice spending money to take the daughter and husband abroad for private trips is basis to remove the Chief Justice, the head of an arm of government, from office? Or you go by those who say that, listen, like Sofa Ekufu said, this is really some flimsy excuse.
Well, Kwaku, it's not flimsy. To the extent that the framers or the enactors felt that such a provision was necessary. I don't think they put it there for fun. And so if she's falling foul of the law, I mean, she has to be dealt with. I mean, and let's not set the bar so low for our political leaders that, I mean, it becomes almost impossible to hold them to account. How then do you hold them to account? Because if somebody stole a mobile phone or 5 Ghana cedis and could go to, serve prison terms for more than 5 years, Why not our politicians? Why not, our judiciary, our judges? Why not our presidents? Why not our members of parliament or ministers? Why not them? And so the idea that this is flimsy doesn't also cut for me. And you see, we cannot also separate the politics from the legal. On that committee, 3 of the persons, are to be chosen by the president. And
in fact,
who
all
did
five,
the president go for?
The president can pick 2 justices from the Supreme Court. He picks Scott Pawan and I see the book.
Good.
He picks 3 other
And
people,
then 3 ordinary, good. So all 5, actually.
A lecturer from the University of Ghana.
So the politics cannot be taken away from it. And right from day one, talk about Kwame Nkrumah's removal of the Chief Justice, Chief Justice Akokosa. Talk about Buzier's comment on no court, that infamous comment on no court. No court will determine, for him how he should run this country and all of that in the Sanla case 568. Talk about the PNDC and the killing of judges. There has always been controversy between the executive and the judiciary, and between the judiciary and the legislature, and between the executive and the legislature. That is the nature of the relationship. It has always been a contentious one and political. And so let's not pretend that where we are right now has not been informed by the politics. They are mutually reinforcing. And I think that the more honest we are in these conversations, the better it would be for our country and for all of us. Mahama, I repeat, has committed no wrong. He simply followed the constitution. Did it meet his political aspiration? Yes, it did. His political, his party members have always wanted, some action taken against the judiciary. And not just him alone, even ordinary people like us who are not MPP or NDC felt that at some point that the judiciary is misbehaving. In fact, her predecessor, what's his name? The CJ Yeboah. Yes, he misbehaved.
So but that's a very strong accusation against Assistant Chief Justice, Chief Justice at the time who retired honorably.
Yes, no issues. I'm saying so. Retirement. He was just lucky to have gone on retirement. Easy, and our former president has done so much that if we are talking about the independence of the judiciary, our former president did more damage to the judiciary. He smashed it. So, we cannot take out the politics from it. That's, in fact, engaging the politics is the only honest way by which we can reform, our institutions and make them better and make them serve our interests. If we want a truly independent judiciary, then, like I said, it's time we look at who appoints the the Chief Justice, and who is able to dismiss the Chief Justice and to discipline, judges in that manner. We can look at the presidency. We are already talking about how to reduce the powers of the president and all of that. And we don't think that the Chief Justice's powers or the powers of the judiciary also have to be streamlined. Nobody's ox is God. Everybody has to be under the Constitution, and everybody's feet must be brought to the fire. And so in this case, and for all the sins that talk about Sal, people have been disenfranchised for 4 years. They had no representation against the same constitution we are all trying to argue in its protection.
Interesting.
And this woman was responsible for that.
Of course, there are those who sought to suggest that, listen, the Chief Justice was simply doing her job. If certain cases did not move as fast as they could go, then really that is not her problem. But of course,
so Mahama is also doing his job.
Right. There are those who actually also, as a counter to that, talk about how, for instance, the minority leader went to court one afternoon in an hour or two he had a panel to sit on these matters. We've been joined by Justice Abdullahi, and I'm glad to throw some of these questions to him. Justice, the big contention of those who have said that, listen, the bar is too low and stated misbehavior is not defined. That's the point everyone has made. And Suti Abochi has also made a good point about how, whether we are setting the bar high or low, stated misbehavior. If the Chief Justice traveled with a daughter and husband and there's audit findings, she can pay those monies back. Is that grounds enough to remove a whole head of an independent arm of government like the judiciary from her role? And people have made those points that, listen, the way the Constitution is couched in Article 146, stated misbehavior, incompetence and all that, is too subjective and is too open, and it could be used as flimsily as possible.
All right, thank you. Just to put matters into perspective, right? Just this afternoon, earlier today, the Deputy Prime Minister of the UK resigned from office. And guess the reason? Because the property she purchased, she ought to have paid a stamp duty of a particular amount. And upon the assessment, it appears that she paid less. She has been pushed out of office. I'm sure if this were to happen in Ghana, we probably would condemn it as, what's the phrase you use? The bar being too low, the threshold being so unreasonable, because we are not used to these kinds of things. We are used to seeing what you probably call a mega scandal before a person can be pushed out of office. That should not be. You are put in a responsible position in government for a particular purpose. You are supposed to lead beyond reproach. If you are able to stick to that standard, that highest form of standard set for that office, you have no business being there. It's as simple as that. Now, come to the issue of the former CG. And I've heard these comments, and I've heard a lot of them. And my question is, which of the bars, where in this whole scheme of the issues that resulted in her removal, was the bar lowered such that she ought not to have been removed from office, but for the lowered bar? Who is bringing that up for us to be able to decipher, to be able to discuss, and to be able to determine whether indeed the bar is that low? And second, are we saying that those who sat on these matters, from the Council of State, which is made of eminent personalities of this republic, to the committee made of members of the Supreme Court, none of these personalities saw through this alleged lowered bar, for which reason they ought to have thrown away the petition as was before them? Are we saying that we are more intelligent than these persons? Far from that, I'm not asking that we shouldn't criticize when things go wrong, but I'm asking that if you say that something is too low or too high, you should be able to bring us a standard that you believe in your systems of analysis is good enough for purposes of measurement, within which someone should be thrown out or should be retained. So far, nobody has been able to give us the standard required. What everyone is saying is simply just giving us a general brushing of description of a lower or a higher standard. And I do not think it helps in the discourse that we are having. Let's interrogate the issues by giving us what is supposed to be a good standard for us to be able to measure whether a person should be removed from office or be allowed to stay in office. That is the position that I believe we should be targeting. Now, if you move up from there, some others have commented on the procedures that have been used, and that the procedure is too loose and too open. In fact, I was one of the earliest persons to condemn the procedure as having been too loose. But even at the time that I made this point, this should be right at the beginning of the petition, when the CG actually invited the president to forward the petition to her. My comment, in addition to this issue, on this same issue, was that, first of all, the procedure may be very loose. However, this is a procedure that we have used way back. In fact, I think the first time we used this procedure was arguably in the year 2015, when Anas did his expose on the Superior Court judges, and about 10 or so judges of the High Court judges lost their job through this same procedure. No one saw anything wrong with it. Why? Because I'm sure, based on these discussions, the standard was quite high at the time. Maybe the threshold was very high, and so they were right to be removed from office. In fact, at the time, Justice Alderi contested every single step of the removal process, but it was thrown out. Every step he made was thrown out, and eventually he was removed from office. The rest of the other justices were all sacked, dismissed. Nobody, some even died out of shock. But the rest of us were very quiet, including those calling the standard as very low, the procedure as very simple and very easy to manipulate. And I will not even contest that. But this was, in recent memory, this was the first time we used it. Following from there, Charlotte Osei faced the same music somewhere in 2017. And once again, she was thrown out. No one saw anything wrong with it. Why is this suddenly an issue? Remember, the removal process of a Supreme Court judge, of the Chief Justice, of a Superior Court judge, of other constitutional bodies, heads of other constitutional bodies, is the same. It's the same. They all go through the same process. So if it is good for the goose, the gander must enjoy it too.
Yeah. And Justice, please hold it there for me briefly, because Aaron, this is why I want to bring you in. You talked about how the bar was so low, and you've heard from Justice Abdullah giving us two situations. Look at the situation of the Deputy UK Prime Minister, who's had to resign from office because she was supposed to pay certain higher taxes. She paid, but didn't pay up to that. She's out of office. If you don't believe that a Chief Justice expending public resources to take care of their husband and daughter on trips that the state should not be paying for, should be removed from office, then what bar? Does the Chief Justice have to kill someone? Does she have to do something for the person to be removed?
Hello, Kwaku.
Yes, Aaron.
Yes. So, Kwaku, let me first begin with the fact that I have not spoken about even a bar here. That should be clear. I have not spoken about a bar here. But before I come to your matter, I think my brother Ernesto must get this right. For him to say there is a certain stated misbehavior or somebody misbehaved, does not lie with him. It is for no reason that in the case of Alas and Kotokoli versus Moro Hauser, Edusei said that sentiment must not have a place in the administration of law. And as such, if we allow sentiment, it will stifle the administration of principles in law. So sentiment shouldn't come in. If he believed that there was a certain stated misbehavior, he should have gone through the process and get a ruling to that effect. Two, Sao people were not disenfranchised. He should find the case of Jache versus the NDC.
But it's really English. It's really English.
I can deal with that matter, but that is not the main subject we are talking about. Sao was not disenfranchised. I will share the case with you, Kwaku. Aaron, you can look into it.
Aaron, what I'm saying
now,
is, Aaron, we are just talking English. Sao people did not vote for a member of parliament. So for 4 years, they did not have a member of parliament. They had a right to vote. They voted for a president. But when it comes to voting for a member of parliament, they didn't vote. So
the fact that you didn't vote or you chose not to vote does not mean you were disenfranchised. Let's get it clear. There has been a lot of propaganda on that. If you want me to have time to address that, I will do that. But let me come to the third point. Sweetie made a very good point that she wants to know the constitutional provision that is being breached. And I mentioned to you, Kwaku, that we do not read the Constitution in part. At least our own senior on the call, Justice Abdullah, that I, Aaron Asidu, relied on his case to pass my entrance exams, would testify to the fact that then the Constitution itself cannot be read in part. So if you read Article 146 and you don't comply with the Article 296C that demands a CI, then there will be a problem. Now, let me come back to the bar you were talking about. I've mentioned again that I have not spoken about whether the bar is high or low. Senior Justice Abdullah made it clear that Well, people believing that the threshold is low or whatsoever, that is a subjective interpretation anyone can put on. My point I have made and I will insist on making is that we need that constitutional instrument. Why? We need the law to be certain and predictable so that tomorrow, when my senior Justice Abdullahi is taken to the Supreme Court to be a JSC, there wouldn't be a certain committee coming in place to say that this is stated misbehavior. Tomorrow, another committee sits and says that this is stated misbehavior. The law must be predictable. Then again, I have not even spoken about the procedure being loose, just as we have all witnessed in the Ria Koto case. I maintain that Ria Koto is not a bad decision. It was a bad law being implemented by the court, and the court couldn't have manufactured any new law. These are the laws we have, and at least our current constitution provides a mechanism in Article 296C for us to have the CI to make the laws predictable. Kweku, it is the predictability of the law I have been crying all out throughout this program. If we have a predictable law, we will know that tomorrow when we are dealing with another justice which has come under Article 146 scrutiny, we wouldn't classify it as witch hunt.
Okay, Aaron, please hold there for me. Let me bring in Sweetie Abochi again. And Sweetie, listen, we need to move forward as a country, obviously. There are calls for the Constitution to be amended to reflect some of these things, because Aaron just concluding that talks about how the process must be consistent. There must be certain defined principle. Because, in fact, some of the issues raised against Madame Tokonu today that has become the subject of her removal, they went to President Akufo-Addo, and the President Akufo-Addo, with the then Council of State, dismissed them when Professor Kwaku Asante went. And some of them have succeeded today. So clearly it tells you about the inconsistency, the matter having to do with the Chief Justice writing to the President to ask the President to nominate certain judges. When Professor Kwaku Asante petitioned the President Akufo-Addo to use that as a basis to kickstart the process to remove Madame Tokonu, the President, together with the Council of State, in making a prima facie determination, which they said there were none, dismissed that and said that it failed to disclose any real case. But this time around, the same argument has formed part of a larger allegations that have ousted the Chief Justice. So clearly, we need to make some changes so that we can bring in some trust. And I want you to also touch briefly on the claims that have been made that listen, this will lead to an erosion in the trust in our judiciary.
I actually disagree with you, Kweku. From the time this started, somewhere in March, I said to myself, and maybe I even mentioned on the AM show, that this would define whether Ghana's judiciary is seen as an independent pillar of democracy or an appendage of politics. Because it looks like as and when it favors a certain political party, they want to agree with what the Constitution says. The framers of the Constitution gave us checks and balances for a reason, so that when one arm of government weakens, the other can check itself. And democracy, we know democracy is very fragile. Look, just like you said, when the petition was brought against the same Chief Justice under the SWA administration, what President Akufo-Addo did was wrong. He has no right to, on his own, decide that this has no merit and just disregard it. His response in a very strong worded letter, I think it was Professor Kwaku Asante's petition, I stand corrected. Yes. And he said it had no merit. Meanwhile, the Constitution clearly says that the President has you are just supposed to be a conveyor belt. But what he did was gatekeep.
The President will say he was making a prima facie determination with the Council of State, and that is why they found no basis in that.
Right. What I'm saying, though, is that we cannot keep doing this and playing a political football with whether or not what we have done is constitutional or legal or political. I think that at the end of the day, the judiciary is a guardrail of our democracy. And it sends a strong message to every justice, every incoming Chief Justice after this, that if you break the law, if you are found culpable, you can be removed because the law is the law. And I was the one who raised the question of the bar being high or low. And we can all say that UK point, example that was the Aaron or Justice Abdullahi that made that point tells you how high the bar is in some jurisdictions. We like to underplay things and say, that attitude we have is the reason why we are still here as a country, So I think that going forward, we should take our lessons from this. We should understand that there is checks and balances for a reason. And if today it is the Chief Justice, tomorrow it could be any other institution. And so we should take the lessons from this and rather look at what the constitutional review process that is actually in motion can do about Article 146, because it looks like that is the pivot around which all the controversy and the arguments of whether or not this is a political vendetta is coming to. So I think for me, to conclude this matter for me would be what has happened has happened. Unless someone has evidence to prove that there were constitutional infractions, I disagree with that point about 146 should be read in conjunction with another article. I think that we did what the petitions were brought. Justice Tokono was heard. The committee was formed. A prima facie case was determined. The committee was formed. They have listened to witnesses, and this is what the outcome is. We can accept it or we can continue arguing, but I think we just take the lessons from it and look forward, because at the end of the day, it is a true test of the strength of our constitution and our democracy. We should stop playing the political football of, when it's convenient for one political party, then they agree with what the constitution says.
Just Abdullah, because of what you just said, if you can do this for me a minute or two, and then we'll just try and come back and wrap the conversation up. Do you think that 146 process is foolproof, or there must be specific changes that must be made in the ongoing constitutional review to improve it? Or you think really it has its own safeguards?
Indeed, undoubtedly, we do need some strong review of the processes. I think the dangers inherent in the current process is that it can be easily weaponized by any person who wishes to occasion some mischief, and who decides if that person is a president. The procedure is so simple, so easy that he could simply manufacture a petition from his bedroom, get it delivered to his office. He forwards it to the Council of State. Within a minute, he gets the majority of the Council of State, who probably may play ball with him to vote in favor of an impeachment process. By finding a prima facie case, and then the rest is history. And so it needs to be more robust. It needs to be more elaborate, and it needs to be such that it can be devoid of abuses. So yes, I do agree with that school of thought, and that has always been my position from day one anyway, that we need to do a thorough review of the processes for the removal of our constitutional heads. And in the same vein, I would also call for a complete review of the appointment processes, because it is the appointment processes that give birth to the removal processes. And so we cannot tackle one and leave the other. If the removal process is that easy and the appointment is somewhat lukewarm, you are likely to find in your state a position where people will be looking at their shoulders all the time in order to please the powers that be, just so they could also be appointed tomorrow. And it will be so easy for the incumbent to be, even if not removed, just to mark time, just with the hope that the other person will be appointed. And that is even more dangerous than having the current system. So I will call for a complete review of both the appointment and the removal processes of our independent constitutional bodies to safeguard our constitution and for the protection of our collective interest. It's the best way to go. But having said that, I think I need to point out that contrary to what Suti said, when Professor Kwaku Asante indeed sent his petition at the time to President Akufo-Addo, the Council of State was invited to make input. So it was a consultation between the President and the Council of State for the decision that was arrived at to be arrived at. But that is not to justify what happened, though, because I think that the basis for even throwing it away was very, for me, unacceptable.
Exactly, and that is why even people have called for standardization of the process, because how is it that the same allegation, one president, one council of state, it doesn't survive. One president, one council of state, in another government, the same argument survives. Let me give you the last word on this, Ernesto, but very briefly, if you want any changes or you think this system is good enough.
Well, like I have said, I think that obviously there needs to be some reviews of sort, right from how the Chief Justice is appointed and removed. I think that whole process needs to be looked at. But whilst on this, I think that the government will do themselves a lot of good if they allow for the publication of the committee's report. We all need to see in its entirety what became the grounds for the removal of Justice Tokono. And then also, I think that her right to challenge her expulsion should also be safeguarded. And if we do not have that in the Constitution yet, I think that in the review process, we may want to take a look at that, because it's all part of the protection of the fundamental freedoms that every human being should enjoy, including Justice Tokono herself.
Including Justice Tokono herself. Thank you very much, Ernesto Yeboah. And could have gone on and on, but Andy Dusty has just walked in and the library is up next. You don't want to miss that. Suti Abochi, thank you very much. For those of you who have been missing Suti Abochi on the AM show, she's going to be quite a regular on Ghana Connect now. She's out for some time, and so you will not catch her on AM show. But if you still want to hear her, please do come to Ghana Connect. And every Friday, as regularly as we can have her, we will definitely have her on here. Thank you very much, Suti, for joining. Thank you very much, Ernesto Yeboah. Thank you very much, Justice Abdullahi, for sharing your perspectives on this matter with us. And then thank you very much, Aaron Esiedu of the Law Lab, for also sharing your view. Tomorrow on Newsfile, CJ Tokono removal, the law and the politics. Banyiri Field, 31 killed, 48,000 displaced. And then MPP loses Akwetia, fair or foul play. You should join Samson at 9 o'clock a.m. on this matter on Newsfile. And let me go by reading Samuel Mbura's message. It says, Kwaku, I don't get why there's so much fuss about the CJ's removal. If she broke the law and the procedures were followed, the president has done nothing wrong. But here's the thing, removal isn't enough if the allegations are true. She should face prosecution to set an example for other public officials. Let's look at what's happening in the UK. A deputy prime minister resigned over a tax issue, even though she followed proper processes. She is still liable for prosecution or a fine. Our systems needs cleaning up no matter who is in power. To the next CJ, I would say take note and deal with these matters. That is the message we've also gotten from people who have been listening to the show. And so, definitely, we'll be back same time next week. My name is Kwaku Asante. This has been